Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today, and thank you for joining us. I'm Mallory Price, here with Paige Frame, President of McKinnon Mulherin at a communications consulting firm, and Brad Douglas, Executive Vice President of Shipley. Today's webinar focuses on a topic that has been requested from us multiple times, the language of winning. We all know that words matter, especially when we're competing for a contract or developing a proposal. So that will be our focus today, the language of winning. If you have questions during the webinar, please feel free to type them into your questions tab and on your control panel, and we will get to as many as we can. All right, and here is our agenda for the webinar today. We're going to talk about what is language? What is the language of losing? LOL, probably not.
Like that.
Yes, LOL. Language of losing. What is the language of winning? The 4 aspects of the language of winning, and speed bumps that impact the language of winning. How to leverage language of winning, and then we will wrap it up with a summary. And Brad and Paige are going to take the lead on most of these slides, so let's get started. First, we just have a few quotes about the language of winning. So first, we have, poor business writing costs businesses big dollars, both in inefficiencies and lost sales.
And this, Mallory, as I read into this a little bit more, the cost of poor writing is just really, really significant.
Absolutely.
Because of the time, wasted time for the readers, misinterpretation, rework, things like that.
Definitely. Clear writing means clear thinking. I absolutely agree with that one. Treat the reader's time as more valuable than your own. People who think well write well. Good writing is not a natural gift. You have to learn to write well.
You know, I've heard it said by some that our writing is kind of like a blood sample of how we think.
Sure, yeah.
And so this quote reminded me of that if we're thinking like the customer, if we're thinking what's going to benefit the customer, that's how our writing is going to come across.
Absolutely. American workers spend nearly a quarter of their day reading. Much of that is wasted because the material is poorly written. There's a lot of bad writing in the world. I'll be the first to say that. You can have all the great ideas in the world, and if you can't communicate, nobody will hear them.
Good point.
Absolutely. All right, well, Brad, let's get started.
Okay, well, let's start with what we often start with, and that is just a little definition. This is the language of winning. So what is language? As a noun, this is one definition here, a body of words and systems for their use common to a people who are the same community or nation. This is an obvious definition. Another definition, communication by voice in a distinctive human manner, using arbitrary sounds in conventional ways. Any set or system of signs, words, or symbols as used in a more or less uniform fashion by a number of people. Signs, words, and symbols, and the key here is those last few words, who are thus enabled to communicate intelligibly with one another. Intelligibly, a key word. And then the final point on this particular definition, any such system used or conceived as a means of communicating thought, emotion, like the language of mathematics, sign language, and of course we added in here the language of winning, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Certainly. So Brad, I'm getting a few questions about it. So these slides and the presentation will be available on our website by tomorrow. So if you would like a repeat or you want to, remember what was talked about today, then you'll be able to see those on our website.
Great. In fact, there'll be a recording, so if they want to go back and play it back,
Right.
they could listen as well. So if you take that definition of language, and there's kind of then the four components of the language of winning, okay? A body or system of words, signs, or symbols that helps you win. All right, that's one thing we're talking about. The other aspect is communication in writing or by voice using words with conventional meaning. In other words, the language of winning has to be easy to understand. Aspect number 3, any set of such signs or symbols enabling people to communicate intelligibly with one another. It has to be customer focused. If our goal in communicating, whether it's a briefing, a document, a proposal, if it's not focused intelligibly on the customer, we're missing the mark. Any system of symbols, words, sounds, or gestures used as a means to communicate thought or emotion. Persuasion. So we're going to talk about the language of persuasion as well. So these are the 4 areas we're going to focus on during this webinar. Language that helps you win, point 1. Language that is easy to understand, point 2. That is customer focused, point 3. And that is persuasive. And Mallory, maybe if you don't mind, just reading off some of these.
Sure.
We're goofing around here with LOL, language of losing, but there certainly are some key things that are the opposite of the language of winning.
Sure. So bad grammar or spelling errors definitely contributes to loss. Passive voice. List features instead of benefits. Use of jargon. Too technical. Run-on sentences or chunky paragraphs, no one wants to read those. All about us instead of about the customer. Wordiness.
Good, yeah, so those are a few that
Sure.
do that, and we've got a better chance of losing. All right, so we're going to turn this over to Paige in just a second here. We're going to, again, the focus of the webinar is going to be on, and Paige and I are going to kind of tag team this. We're going to talk about these 4 aspects that we showed of the language of winning. Helping you win through your language, making sure it's easy to understand, it's customer focused, and persuasive. So Paige, if you'd take it away and talk about this first element, language that helps you win.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me and for everyone who is signed on today. So this first one, obviously the language of winning should help you win. So one way you can do this is to think about your proposal as a story. So instead of, sometimes our proposals get extremely technical, but truly they are a persuasive sales document. And so if we think of it as a story, beginning with something that draws attention or interest, builds our credibility, will really make it easier to read and make it easy to follow. If we go from a beginning to a middle to an end, readers are going to be able to follow our thought and what we're proposing. We want to include enough detail to keep interest, of course, to explain what we're proposing, but keeping it as short and sweet as we can. And then wrapping it up with an ending or summary helps us understand or decide that motivates our reader to take action. We got to remember that our proposal is more than just words on a paper. We want to make sure that we've got, we're including some variety, that it's complete, correct, concise, a full document that you're presenting. And of course, we want to make sure that our proposals are compliant. That is certainly going to help you win, but going a step further from compliance, that they're also responsive. So not just answering the requirements that are listed, but also addressing hidden issues and needs that that might be going unspoken in the official RFP, but we know are important to our reader and our client. So these are the this first step of how to make our proposals incorporate this language of winning to help you win. The next one that we're going to talk about is making sure that our proposals are easy to understand. We're going to go through a couple of these ways that we can make it easier for our reader to get the message that we're trying to present. So first of all, using graphics and captions. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. Also finding ways to emphasize our most important parts, or our most important messages. If we can have things stand out with white space around them, put important information into lists and headings, that'll draw our reader's eye to the most important pieces, which also comes with the next piece, page design and layout. We want to present something that's professional and appealing, that looks good, but is also makes it easier on the reviewers and evaluators to read our proposals. We want to organize it for ease of evaluation. So matching what they're requesting, of course, is first and foremost, but also prioritizing by what's most important to the client. So giving them the information that they need or want the most in the easiest format is going to help us all. Kind of going back to what we talked about early on, that people are spending a quarter of their day reading. We want to write stuff that's easier to read so that they're not spending so much of their time trying to decipher what we're giving them. Also keeping our sentence and paragraph length short, keeping paragraphs to one idea only, keeping our sentences straight and to the point makes it easier to understand and read. And then finally, using familiar language to the customer. So if your customer is using, if they call their customer instead of client, we want to match that language. If they use a certain acronym for their company or products, we want to match that language. Make it easy for them to read it and make it feel as if they're reading something that would be internal. That's just how they all talk within their own organization. So using language that matches how they talk internally as well. So that's number 2.
This next aspect page, as you know, is just something we hammer on quite a bit. As you know, this notion of making sure our language is customer focused. So if you'd walk us through this next aspect as well, that'd be great.
Yeah, actually, before we move on really quick, I have a couple of questions that have come in.
Okay.
So, Paige, I think you really hit home on this telling the story idea. So I have 2 questions. One is, how can you tell a story when the RFP is a Q&A format, or when the customer has given you a strict outline and page count? How can you still tell a story in those 2 situations?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one way that you can still incorporate kind of a beginning is at least including an executive summary that gives an outline of what you're going to present, your main idea that you're pitching, and give that kind of beginning with a strong executive summary. But even if you aren't able to write the story how you want to, I think it's a great activity to outside of the Q&A, say exactly what you want to tell the customer, right? In a Word document, you know, here are the main parts that I would want to touch on, and find a way to start incorporating those into your Q&A. And so instead of just jumping right in, treating each question individually, I'm reading the question, I'm answering to it, completely forget, go to the next question and respond to the next one. Come up with what your story is outside of that Q&A format, and then find ways to incorporate it and still transition from one question to the next. Really will make it easier for them to read, but it's also going to make it more likely that they're going to remember it, because it's not just question answer. It'll have more of a theme and flow from one question to the next.
Paige, I couldn't agree more. You hit on it exactly, this idea of transitions, where even if it's a Q&A proposal or we're answering a bunch of questions, if we've done our homework and we've looked through the whole RFP and the whole series of questions, the questions might be in such a way that it does allow us to almost tell a story in the way we answer. So if we don't do our homework and all we're doing is grabbing the RFP and start answering questions or pulling in boilerplate, but we haven't really read through the RFP to see if there is a storyline there, we've missed an opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point. Yeah, good question. Thanks. Were there any others, Mallory?
Not at the moment.
Okay, great. So perfect. We'll go into number 3 of language of winning, which is, as Brad said, one that's extremely important to Shipley and should be important to all of us and anyone who's writing proposals, making sure that our language is customer focused. So we're going to hit on about 7 things here, and then we're going to go into each one in more detail. So I'll just briefly go through them right now. First of all, we want to state the benefits before features, so leading with what's most important to the customer, how it benefits them versus what we can provide and our features. Validating every claim so that we're not leaving our customer wondering whether what we're saying is true or not. Naming the customer first, making it more about them, and also naming them more often than we name ourselves, really, again, leading with what's most important to them. And just directly attributing hot buttons to key stakeholders. So if we know an issue or a motivation is very specific to one key stakeholder, actually identifying that in our proposal and linking it up to that specific person. Focusing on our discriminators, what sets us apart from competitors, and then finally articulating the customer's buying vision back to them, making sure that they can see that we understand what their buying vision is. So let's go through each of these specifically in a little more detail, and we've got a couple examples here. So talking about benefits before features, again, we really want to give the customer the information that's most important to them. That's what makes this customer focused. So our first example is that our CRM system is unique with the ability to be customized to your needs and industry. And so we're saying that it can be customized to the client, and it feels like that's kind of an unstated benefit, but we really want to spell it out for them and explain exactly how that benefits them. So putting the customer up front, saying National Bank will increase customer engagement by 22% with our retail-oriented CRM system. So we're putting the customer up front, telling them exactly what the benefit is, and in this case, even quantifying that benefit, which makes it even stronger. Next, point on making it customer focused is validating every claim. This is pretty straightforward. If we've got something that says our software adoption rate is 79% in the first 12 months of implementation, that's a great statistic, but we want to, if there's anything we can do to really prove that, even better. So if we can say, as stated in Computing Magazine's report, customer adoption rates 79% in the first 12 months, really strengthens that claim and makes it, again, easier on the client to trust it and move on and not wonder where we're getting that information. Okay, next is naming the customer first. So if we're going to be customer focused, we should obviously put them up front. So instead of, if we're Vibrant and we're saying Vibrant software improves customer engagement with its AI feature, we're not talking about the customer at all. So if we rewrite it, put the customer right up front, National Bank will improve customer engagement by implementing our AI features that are included in the standard version. So again, this one feels the most obvious and sometimes is the hardest to do. that if we're writing something to our customer, we want to make sure that we're putting them right up front in our as we're writing. Similarly, we want to name them more often than we name ourselves. So even if we put them up front in the first sentence, sometimes we fall into the habit of then every following sentence we say we. And so in this case, you can see we're talking about Vibrant, which is us, that we've got all this experience, that we're well known in the industry, and will meet your expectations. So these are all great things. I hope we should have these things, but we can rewrite it so that we're putting the customer up front, saying National Bank will benefit from our 32 years of banking specific experience, and that they'll achieve their 15-second response time with our tailored application that supports your vision. And I think a good point here is that we're still saying all the same information, and it's still okay to say our or we. We don't want to take ourselves completely out and not say who we are, but we just want to name them more often than us, make sure that it's more about the customer than it is about us.
Paige, I'd be interested in your opinion. One of the questions that came in from somebody that registered, when they registered, was, is it okay to use you and your in a proposal response when talking about the potential customer? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do think it depends on the customer. And so this is kind of goes back to using their language. One thing I like to do is go out to their website and read things like their press releases or even the language just on their website to kind of see how they talk about themselves. I generally think it's a good idea to go ahead and say you and your. It makes it more specific that you're saying we're talking directly to you as company to company or organization to organization. But it does, I think there are some situations where you might go out and see that they have a highly formal way of writing, and they might only refer to the company as its and there and talking about it as the company in a whole. So that's my personal rule of thumb, is that it is okay unless you're looking and seeing that their language is highly formal.
Awesome, thank you, Paige. So we did have another comment slash question come in, and Brad, I'm going to have you handle this one. We have a lot of different evaluators out there, a lot of different opinions from evaluators, so I think this is a good perspective to talk about for a moment. What about the whole idea of under-provide but over-deliver? We seem to be either implying promises or making actual promises with the customer-focused rewrites that we used here as examples. What are your thoughts on that, Brad?
Yeah, I think it gets back to validating claims.
Yeah.
So these are very short examples, obviously, that we're showing here on the screen. So whenever we're making statements like this about a response time or something like that, we've got to make sure we're not over-promising or under-promising, and that at some point near that statement it's validated. Could be in a call-out box, could be in a graphic with a caption, but when we're making certain claims, I will go back to that. We need to make sure we validate, so we're not over-promising or under-delivering.
Sure, and I think it comes back to, what Paige said. With these examples that we've shown, we're saying all of the same things, just putting the customer's opinion first, if you will, a benefit to the customer first. Okay, thanks, Brad.
Yeah, thanks. So next one that we were talking about in making it customer focused is to attribute hot buttons to key stakeholders. And so this is where we really want to, if we know that a key stakeholder has a very important issue or vision, that we're stating that explicitly. So instead of saying that we're going to help the company's objective of growing year over year, we can be very specific and say, Ms. Ruth Campbell, bank CEO, stated in the annual report that you intend to grow year over year by 10%. And being very specific about that, that shows that we're doing our homework and that we understand the customer, and making it clear that that's why we're bringing it up. Just being very specific in how we talk about it.
The only caution there is make sure we're accurate. Make sure Miss Ruth Campbell is still with the bank.
Right. And that you're not putting words in their mouth. You want to make sure that you're quoting them directly if you're going to say they said something. All right, great. The next one on being customer focused is focusing on our discriminators. So a discriminator is something that addresses a customer need or hot button. So they've got an issue or a motivator, something that's important to the customer. We have a solution, and that solution is unique to us. And it's equal to or better than the competitor's solution, at least perceived by the customer. And finally, kind of comes back to the first bullet, but is valued by the customer. It's something important that they need or want. So that's kind of the three-part what makes a discriminator, is that we have it, our competitors don't have it, and the client wants and needs it. So we don't want to bring up things that that the customer doesn't care about. It has to be something that's important to the customer and also unique to us. And bringing those things up makes it, again, it's about us. It's something that discriminates us, but it makes it easier on our customer to make that decision and to see why it'd be important to go with us versus the competitor, why our solution is going to make their life easier. All right, and then finally, they articulate the customer's buying vision. So knowing that they've stated this objective for the solicitation, that they want to reduce customer acquisition costs and improve customer retention by 12%, we want to state that clearly in the proposal that we understand this vision. So again, we're speaking their language, we're repeating it back to them that we understand and know how to do that. And I would say take it a step farther too, is that we'll get into the habit of just saying, you know, we understand National Bank's objective is to reduce customer acquisition costs, which is good at a baseline, but we can take it a step further and take that information, state it in the proposal, and also show how we can help make that happen with our solution.
Great, Paige. And you know, one thing as far as at this point here, understanding their vision and their buying vision. If we've by chance had meetings with this particular customer or attended a bidders conference or something where this vision was articulated, not just from the RFP, but from some other event or discussion or meeting, it's even stronger if we can say something like, based on the meeting that we had on September 12th in Fairfax, Virginia, the bank's goal is to reduce customer acquisition costs. So if we can even tie it to a specific time frame or meeting, it makes that understanding of their need, their vision, that much stronger. And it's something a competitor might not be able to do. You know, if all the competitor is doing is responding to an RFP and they see the buying vision stated in the RFP, but we have a little better vision or view of that vision, it could work to our advantage. All right, thank you, Paige. Let's go into this fourth aspect of the language of winning, and that is being persuasive in our language, in our communication. And we're just going to give some guidelines here for you to think about and practice. And any of you who are involved in communicating with a customer, whether it's briefings, proposals, however it is, I encourage you to go back and look at some of your messaging and see if it is persuasive for using some of these guidelines. So for example, do you even know what motivates your customer? If it's a government agency, if it's another business, if it's whatever it is, what motivates your customer to buy? Why are they putting this acquisition out there in the first place? It's hard to be persuasive in our language, in our writing, if we don't understand that motivational factor. The second point is we should have some type of collaboration with the customer. If we help the customer feel like it's their idea, our solution is their idea, and that they had some input into that solution, they are more likely to be persuaded by our solution. If it just comes across as our idea and they had no input or no collaboration into it, then it's our idea. They're more apt to be persuaded if they have some skin in the game, so to speak. The next point, provide proof for every claim. Doubt destroys persuasion. So if we're making blanket claims throughout our proposal, throughout our sales briefing or pitch, and we're not backing those up, we're creating doubt and suspicion, and that goes against being persuasive. In our language, being persuasive means we're answering these questions. So what? So what about our solution? How so? How are we going to make sure it does, our solution does what we say it does? And then can we prove it? So this goes back again to the proof statements. Link our solution to the customer's buying vision and hot buttons. We've already talked about this. We have to constantly be linking back to the customer's buying vision and what's important to them, as Paige said. This is how we be persuasive in our language, in our writing. All right, we thought we would spend a little time too on this webinar. Sometimes we know, we learn what we should do as far as language of winning by taking a look at things we should not do. So we've built in here a few of what we're calling speed bumps that get in the way of the language of winning. And I invite you to look at some of your own writing, your own communication, your own work, and see if some of these speed bumps have popped up in your work. For example, one area is just lazy and careless proofreading, becoming overly dependent on spell check, grammar check, and just being lazy or running out of time. Another area is misuse of punctuation, specifically commas. A less common area that we don't talk a lot about, but it's the overuse of hyphens. It's annoying to the reader if we are using hyphens too often in our communication. Paige mentioned run-on sentences. Any sentence that goes beyond about 18 to 20 words, you need to take a look at and see if that sentence is really going to make sense to the reader, or is it too long? Can you break it up? Agreement between subject and verbs. Wordy fluff. You know, this goes back to our education when the teacher wanted a 500-word essay. You know, we just came up with fluffy words that made no sense. Cliches are another way of speed bump. So proofreading is a very common speed bump when it comes to the language of losing or counter to the language of winning. So here, this was actually in a proposal. What this sentence should have said in this proposal was, over the past 8 years, we have enjoyed total success with our customers. But what this person actually put in the proposal was this: without customers, instead of with our customers. So, you know, careful, lazy proofreading can be a pretty bad problem. Misuse of punctuation. Be careful. All right? David, says Mallory. You didn't really say that.
Of course not.
David, says Mallory, is a boring old fool. But if we misuse the comma, David says Mallory is a boring old fool. So two completely different meanings. Who's David?
There are many Davids.
Okay. All right. So be careful with, our use of punctuation. Hyphens. Don't overuse hyphens. Let's take a look, and you don't have to put this in your question window in your navigation bar or anything. Just think to yourself, what's the answer here? A or B when it comes to use of hyphens? Which would be preferable? Mallory?
I prefer B, personally.
Yeah.
I mean, let's take out some of those hyphens and make it a little easier to read.
Yeah, one of a kind code. This code is one of a kind. Yeah. So overusing hyphens is distracting to the reader. Here's another one. Perfectly written does not need to be hyphenated, nor should it be. But people will do it. And so overuse of hyphens can be a distraction, a speed bump when it comes to the language of winning. Run-on sentences. There we go. How would you like to read through that? We should always be targeting 20 words or less per sentence for improved readability when it comes to the language of winning. Sentences that run on beyond 20, it's just too much.
There's nothing wrong with a short sentence, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It gets right to the point, right to the heart of what you're trying to say.
Match your subject and verb to avoid another speed bump. Okay, here's another question, A or B? Every one of the networks are down, or every one of the networks is down. Match the subject and verb. Everyone got their answer? I hope we all agree. Paige, what's the answer?
B. Every
Right on.
is.
Every is. Okay, A or B here, matching subject to verb again. Each of the calls takes about 7 minutes, or each of the calls take about 7 minutes. Paige, you're our guru here.
Each, it'd be A.
Yep.
Each takes.
So the subject is each takes, not each take. Good. All right. Simple little stuff, but it becomes a speed bump for the reader if we're not careful. Now, if those of you that are really paying attention, if you want to type in what you think the answer, what this sentence means in your question box, you're welcome to do that. So you can open up your question box and type what you think we mean by this sentence, because this is a speed bump. We're talking about avoiding wordiness. I utilized a multi-time tool to process a starch resource. What are we trying to communicate here? Any guesses?
I ate pasta with a fork. I ate with a fork. I used a fork to eat my potato.
Oh.
I used a fork to eat carbs.
Carbs. Okay. Yeah, all we're trying to say something here is just simply I use my fork to eat a potato. So good job, whoever got that right.
Yeah, we also had someone that said they have no idea what it means.
No idea. Well, that's how some of our proposal language is, sadly, is the readers, I have no idea what I just read. And so just say what we mean, keep it simple, avoid wordiness. All right, Mallory and Paige, throw out a few cliches that drive you crazy.
Oh, we are pleased to propose.
We are pleased to propose.
How about at the end of the day?
No.
Today. There's a few. Again, we're talking about speed bumps that have a negative impact on the language of winning. The more cliches that we throw into our presentation, our document, our proposal, the more speed bumps we're creating for the reader. So where exactly in our proposals can we apply the language of winning? There's some key areas, some key hot spots, if you will, in our communication, in our proposals, where we can really maximize the language of winning that we've been talking about. And Paige, I'm going to ask you to go through these areas just one at a time briefly as areas that we'd call hot spots for applying the language of winning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the main reasons that we're talking about these specific ones these are the ones that draw a reader's eyes automatically, that they're kind of called out in a different font or a different look, and our natural inclination is to read them first. So these are the best places to put this language of winning. So starting with customer-focused theme statements, we've got this great formula to help put together a really customer focused but winning language theme statement. So we're putting the customer first, just like we talked about, following that right away with a quantified benefit. So leading with customer and benefit, then explaining our feature, how it works, including a discriminator, what makes us unique, and then including proof, validating that claim. So here's an example. We've got National Bank up front as the customer, where we've got our benefit that they reduce the cost and by 35%, so we've quantified it. We've got our feature is still in there. It's clear that it's our CRM system. And then finally, we've got our discriminator, that it includes global in-country support, which in this way we're implying that our competitors don't have that's what discriminates us among the competition. So using this as our formula for our theme statement is going to make it more customer focused and help us win if we incorporate this formula very specifically on theme statements that we know readers are more likely to read, because it gives the overall message of that section or that part of the proposal, really helps strengthen our writing. The next place you would want to make sure that you're incorporating this language of winning is in your headings. So one way we can incorporate this into headings is by using both telegraphic and informative headings. So telegraphic are what you're probably used to. They're usually 1 or 2 words. They make your document easier to scan because you very quickly can see what's in that section. We all know what should be in an introduction. But then to add in the second level an informative heading that gives us a little bit more information about what the benefit is or how we're going to do it. So we've got introduction, and the next one is an overview of benefits to National Bank, or organization, and the next one can be a flat organizational structure reduces overhead cost. So we're actually putting that benefit right into our heading where we know readers are more likely to see it. We could have a design section, and then the system is uniquely designed for retail market. And then implementation, continuous support with a 3-phase implementation. So giving a few more specifics and details helps solidify what your main point is as readers are scanning through your document. Another place to put in our language of writing is in lists. We want to make sure that our lists are consistent. So lists are great because they stick out and people are likely to scan lists first, but they can also add some confusion. So we don't need to number a list unless it's a procedure or steps that go in a sequential order. Entries should be short. If we're having complete sentences, or even worse, several sentences in a bulleted list, it starts to read just like regular body text. So if we want it to stand out and draw attention, they need to stay short. We also get into the danger zone of having nested lists where we end up having 2, 3, 4 levels where suddenly we're losing track of what level we're on. Also having some unclear font variations, mixing what our bullets or numbers look like, and not making our list parallel. It all turns into a very inconsistent format. It's hard to read. It does not do the job that we're trying to do. So ways that you can make your list better: name your list, make sure it's got a heading, you're introducing it well, make your items parallel. A trick to this, if you're having trouble, is to start each list with an active verb. So you'll see that's what we did here. It's one of the easiest ways to make sure that they're parallel, and it reads a lot easier. Use your bullets unless numbering is important. Limit the number of items. Our rule of thumb is to never have more than 9 bullets, and I think even 9 is kind of pushing it. So the shorter your list, the easier it is to scan and read. And highlight it with white space. Keep those lists short so that we've got the white space on both sides, and people can read and scan them easier. Okay, next is using graphics, using signs and symbols, which we're also calling graphics. Some tips on how to get the most out of graphics is to introduce them before they appear. So as you're writing in your text, reference the figure or graphic before it comes. Integrate them into the text, so making sure that they match what you're talking about, that they support your message, and that you're introducing them as they come along. Whenever possible, orient your visuals vertically so that your readers don't have to turn the page, or worse, if it's on the screen, they have to turn their head to view what you've put in there. As much as you can, you want to make sure that your graphics are oriented the correct way so people can read and view them easily. They should be relevant, not just decorative. So no matter how beautiful a picture is, if it's not adding to your message, into your story, it's really not necessary in your proposal. They should be understandable in 10 seconds or less. So we don't want complicated graphics that need a long explanation. We want to keep them short and sweet, that someone can quickly see what we're trying to say just in 10 seconds. And one way to do that is to minimize text in those visuals. So if you've got a whole lot of text in your graphic, it probably is not the right content for a graphic, and we should pull that content out into a different format and use graphics and images in a way that with content that really lends itself well to that sort of thing. So it's really important to use your graphics to help further your message, and one way to help do that is to incorporate a really good caption. So we've got our graphic here and a very short and sweet caption that doesn't really say anything more than what we're already getting from that graphic. So everyone looking at that graphic can see that the bars are going up, and we don't need any more explanation. We understand that that's what's happening. What we need is someone to explain why that's happening, what the benefit of it is. So here is a really great caption that still has that has a short title that says that it improves lead conversion and revenue, but then has a little bit more explanation about why that's a benefit and how we're able to do that with our CRM system. So using this pairing of a graphic and a caption is extremely important, and we know that readers read both graphics and captions before they'll read the rest of the text. So making sure that this is where we're putting our most important information, including that customer focus as well as winning language in those areas where our customers are most likely to look, it will make a much stronger proposal.
And Paige, this is a really good way to share a success story. Mm-hmm. You know, using a graphic and a caption like this, because this shows how our system actually helped another client achieve their goal. So a graphic with a really good, strong caption can help explain and share a success story as well.
Great point. Thanks for adding that. And so I already kind of talked about the formula of action captions, but we'll go into them in a little more detail. Is that when you have a good action caption, it's got these three parts that we want to include: the figure number. We want to have a short title, something that you can quickly understand what the graphic's about, and then have supporting text. And that supporting text should be a full sentence, and it should draw the conclusion for the reader. So we want to very specifically explain what the benefit is to the customer. So we've got a litmus test for your captions. We want to make sure your caption links benefits to features, that they demonstrate succinct sentences, so they're good writing. The graphic should still be able to stand alone, so we want to help draw the conclusion, but even if they don't read the caption, the graphic should still be understandable in those 10 seconds or less, and the caption should come before or below the graphic. So you've got your graphic with your caption beneath it. And then the final piece that we want to make sure we're incorporating the language of winning is in callouts. Callouts should be and often are in a different font and maybe in a different colored box. They draw our attention. We want to use that as a tool to highlight benefits or solutions. So they really provide emphasis by looking different. They also help us navigate, especially if we're referencing back. Our brain remembers where callouts were, remembers what was in them. So keeping them next to text that's on the same topic will help them direct their focus, helps them process, understand by giving this higher level view of what we're trying to say. Should definitely support the text and make that proof point more visible. So it should not be another random comment, but something that's really helping our reader understand maybe some more dense content in the body text.
So you're talking about, Paige, a call out in the actual document like we see here in this.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly.
Box. Okay, good. All right, well, thank you, Paige. Just more or less in summary then, we've really tried to hit on today these four aspects of the language of winning, making sure that whatever language we're using, whether it's words, signs, symbols, graphics, briefings, it's helping us win. It's advancing the sale. It's advancing the opportunity. It's easily understood. It's clear and concise and correct. Paige went through a whole series of customer focus ways that our language can help us win by focusing on the customer as the most important. And then finally, using some techniques that help us be persuasive in our messaging. So the language of winning really should help us persuade evaluators if we'll focus on these four areas. So in proposals, our language does matter. We've summarized four aspects of the language of winning. It helps you win, it's understandable, it's customer focused, it's persuasive. We shared with you some common speed bumps or areas to watch out for. We've talked about some key areas, some prime real estate, if you will, where we ought to use the language of winning, the tips that we've talked about in our proposals. We should always think customer first, and customer focus is really the key. Now, Mallory, there was one question that came in actually before this, and it's not even about the proposal. So I'm adding this in here. One of you asked when you registered, how do we use the language of winning in a presentation or an oral proposal or briefing? And so that is a great question, because when you're face-to-face with a customer or client or prospect, it's not just about the words, as you see here. There is a whole lot that goes into the nonverbal language of winning. You can see here that the nonverbal, the gestures, the movement, your expression, that has probably more sway, more persuasiveness, more relevance than what you actually say, the words. But how you say the words is very important. The words themselves are a little less important. Very important in a presentation or briefing, though, are the nonverbal, the gestures, movements, the way you express yourself and appear. So we wanted to share that because one of you asked about that, and it's a great point. You know, a lot of our communication now, or a lot of our language of winning isn't just words on a page or on a screen. It's presentational. So wanted to share that as well. So thanks for asking that question when you registered. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope this is helpful. We hope you'll review back to some of these ideas and principles that we've covered. Paige, Mallory, thank you so much. We'll post this on our website. Also, a little bonus for those of you that did attend the actual webinar, you'll receive from us a thank you note, and you'll receive a link where you can actually download a section from our proposal guide for free. It's about choosing the right words, word choice in proposal writing. So it's a good 6 or 7 page set of guidelines for choosing the right words. So we'll offer that to you as a thank you for attending today.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. Thank you, Paige, and thank you all for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Take care. Have a good
Bye.
holiday, everybody.